Oh man, it's another YouTuber with a controversial Borderlands 3 opinion just to get views. What a shame. What's up, guys? Krobin here, and today I just wanted to talk a little bit about Borderlands 3. I just came off of a fresh playthrough from start to finish. It took me about 30 hours, played with Megan, my fiance, and just wanted to give my thoughts for the video and kind of let you guys know what I liked and what I didn't like. I'm not going to be talking about the Epic Store and that shit show or anything that Randy Pitchford has done and how much of a douchebag Randy Pitchford is or isn't. I just want to give my opinions on the game and give kudos where the team did really well, and then give some criticisms where they really could have improved upon. And I'll try to do it as concisely as possible. So starting off, the things that I liked, I really loved the sound and the music. Gun sounds are a little bit loud. They could be toned down just a bit, but you can do that yourself in your options. The graphical fidelity is really great. It definitely looks like they took their time trying to make the game look as beautiful as possible, and that speaks to both the PC and the console versions. Even on the performance mode where you get the higher frame rates, the game looks really good, and it's really, really well done, and the artists and everything, they deserve a really big praise. Another thing that I really liked about Borderlands was the loot system and how things worked. And I'll probably spend the majority of the time about what I like talking about this, because if you guys watch my Anthem video, I talked about how you didn't really feel respected as a player for playing that game. Loot drops were stingy. They patched the loot drops, and it just was really not that fun. Whereas in Borderlands 3, loot literally rains from the fucking sky, from everywhere. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter anything. Everywhere drops loot. Everything drops loot. And most of it you can use, which is pretty cool, I really loved that fact. Another thing that I loved, kind of tying into loot, was the fact that after you finish playing, you can start mayhem mode right away. So right after my first playthrough was done, I turned on Mayhem 3, because that's what you do. You don't fucking go, from normal to Mayhem 1. No, you do Mayhem 3 like a real gamer, like elite gamer. That's what I do. But when I started Mayhem 3, I went and I went to Athenas, and Megan and I were just going to go see what Mayhem 3 was like, if it was too difficult, if we needed to tone it down or whatever. And the very first legendary I got was from a mailbox. I literally just opened a mailbox and there was a legendary, and I was just like, oh hey, this is pretty cool. I just got a fucking legendary from a mailbox. That was pretty great. Great. Yeah, that's what I sound like when I play video games. But it was a very good change of pace from other games where they're kind of stingier on loot. Borderlands literally didn't give a shit. They gave me a legendary in a mailbox, and that was within 2 minutes, and then by minute 30 I had 800 other legendaries just dropping from random enemies. Random enemies, badass enemies, whatever. I got loot drops, and then if you killed like a special boss or whatever, you get like 2 or 3 per, and that was really fun, and that was really enjoyable, and it really reinforces the fact that Borderlands 3 opens up more as a game after you complete the main story, right? The main story is kind of there just to get you introduced to the game, and then after you complete that, then you get into the real meat of the game, and that's really fucking awesome, and it feels good as a player. And I think that's where Borderlands has always shined, is you feel very respected for your time whenever you're playing the game. There's always something that you're going to get that's really cool, and something that will really just push your builds forward and help you kill things faster. So that was a very nice change of pace. Now on to the bad stuff that I didn't like. So the first and the biggest criticisms that I'm going to give comes in 2 pieces: the performance as well as the story. So starting off with the performance, the PS4 version is absolutely, utterly atrocious. I'm just going to say that right now, if you are playing split screen. So for those of you who don't know, if you play split screen with someone and someone opens their menu while you are in a firefight and they change a menu, they scroll over to a different item, or they just open the map or whatever, your game will literally stutter for a second or two. and it's really jarring, especially when you're trying to kill enemies or if you're down and you're trying to res yourself. It's really jarring, and it's absolutely insane how something like that was given the okay to be pushed to a consumer build. It's really, really, really astounding, and I don't get how someone signed off and said that that was okay to do. I really don't. So aside from that, on the PC version, you don't have that stuttering whenever you're playing with someone. However, you do get performance dips. Now, I'm running a pretty beefy rig, and I'll post that down in the description below of what I'm running. But there were times that were seemingly random where I was getting my frames to just tank to 1. And it was like that for a good, 5-7 seconds. And it could be as often as 4 hours or as soon as an hour after one happened. And it was seemingly random. And the only explanation that I can do was the game was trying to, get rid of any garbage that it had cached and didn't think that it needed anymore. But it collected so much garbage that it just took a second for the game to get rid of that. And I'm not sure. I'm not 100%. That's my hunch. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but that's the feeling that I got. Moving on to the story, I think the story is pretty weak, actually. In my opinion, the story is nowhere near as good as it could have been for a game that was in development, for 5 to 7 years. I think really coming off of Tales of the Borderlands and how well written even Borderlands 2 was, I think the story was very weak, and especially in the first 3 quarters of the game, the last quarter of the game is when things kind of start, popping up and making sense, but none of it had that impact, right? If you guys remember playing Borderlands 2, there were a lot of things that happened that really just got you, like when you find out that Angel is a siren, and Angel's been the character with you from the first Borderlands, and you find out that she's a siren, and that was a big moment, right? That was a big, you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Angel's a fucking siren? What the shit? And that was very, very impactful. It had a lot of meaning, and it brought a lot of context into what had happened over the course of not just Borderlands 2, but Borderlands 1 as well. And Handsome Jack was just, he was really well done. When you started Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack was in your face, giving you quips, shit-talking you the whole way, and you could sense that he was as powerful as he was. And it wasn't because he had powers. It wasn't because he was anything special. His power was manipulating people, right? And so at that same moment, when you find out that Angel is a siren, and you get the vault key and you free her from her prison, and then Jack kills Roland and captures Lilith, you're like, holy fucking shit. Like, this dude he's a guy, I don't think that really happened in Borderlands 3. There was never a moment that happened and you're just like, oh my god, what the shit, with the exception of what happens in the last quarter of the game. I think another thing that really set Borderlands 3's story back was in that same aspect, that there wasn't anything that really happened that delivered an impact that I think that they were going to go for. I think Borderlands 3 had an issue where things happened because they happened, if that makes sense. So after you open the first vault and something happens with a character, to avoid spoilers for those of you who are, have yet to play it, because it's still in its first week, it didn't feel like there was anything really meaningful to that, You're like, this thing just happened. And okay. And the really unfortunate part was it seemed like it was done to facilitate the character growth of someone else, but then it actually didn't facilitate their character growth a lot. It was kind of just like, what? You did this to move a character forward, but then that character didn't move forward. Like, and that's just really fucking disappointing, because you come off of Borderlands 2, and if you played through Borderlands 2 just before Borderlands 3, like I did, there were a lot of things that just really, there were a lot of things that had meaning and impact and payoff, and that's a big thing too. There was no payoff to what happens in the first 3 quarters of the game. There was just stuff that happened and stuff you were doing. Another comparison that I make to whoever I talk about that kind of just wants to talk about this is in the story. There are a lot of things that happen, and what I compare this to is if you guys watch Mission Impossible, I believe it's Ghost Protocol, the one where they go to Saudi Arabia and Tom Cruise climbs on the big ass building. A lot of that movie and its criticisms was the fact that they would set out to stop the bad guy. The bad guy would circumvent them, and they're like, we have one more chance to stop the bad guy. But then they would go to try and stop the bad guy, they would get circumvented, and then they would be like, we have one last chance to stop the fucking bad guy. We gotta beat Tom Cruise, and we gotta fucking stop this bad guy. And then it would never happen, up until, the last 45 minutes of the movie or so. And that's what I feel like happened with Borderlands 3. A lot of the story seemed like, this is our chance to stop them from being bad guys. Shit, they stopped us. This is our chance to stop the bad guys. Shit, they stopped us. Well, we got one more chance, boy. Let's go. That was a pretty common occurrence in the story for me, and that was really disappointing because comparing it again to Borderlands 2, there was never anything like that, right? For the first half of Borderlands 2, you were working towards an objective. You had to get the vault key away from Handsome Jack because he's charging it to unleash the warrior, right? And then when you finally get to the vault key, he ends up killing a major character and capturing another one of your friends and still has the vault key. It was never this wild goose chase of trying to stop the bad guy. It was always you had a clear objective in mind that was pushing you forward, and the only time it was stopped, the next step was you had to go and actually get revenge for him killing Roland. And that was it. And that had so much meaning to the game. That provided so much payoff to the fucking game. And that wasn't a thing with Borderlands 3. It was you're on a wild goose chase the whole game. Another thing I just want to touch on really quick before this video ends, and kind of ranted for a little bit, or rambled rather, is that this was my opinion. If you haven't had any issues with Borderlands 3, you haven't had any performance issues, or you thought the story was good, then good job. And I'm happy that you guys got a product that you were expecting, and for the most part I did too. I don't want that to take away. I don't think the game is a bad game. I think Borderlands 3 is a good Borderlands game, and you get what you pay for. There's a million trillion guns, and loot rains from the sky, and you can kill a loot midget and then pull the loot from his asshole, and that's great, and that's exactly what Borderlands should be, and I don't think that should change. I just think that there are some things about Borderlands 3 that really could have been improved, really could have been a little bit refined. It could have spent a little bit more time in the oven. They could have patched out a lot of the stuff before they released it to the public, but it is what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Borderlands 3. And if you guys have any thoughts of your own, something that I didn't touch on, I didn't talk about anything that happened in like the pre-sequel or Tales of the Borderlands. So if you guys want to talk about that in the comments, just be respectful, man. Like no one cares about toxicity. Everyone just wants to love Borderlands and have it be the best Borderlands. And that's kind of where this video came from, is I really wanted a Borderlands 3 that was just absolutely perfect, and it was really hard to criticize, but it is what it is. And that's pretty much what you can say about it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day.